Welcome to Malifaux University. Introducing the 4th edition rulebook. What a week we've had with announcements, revelations, analysis, and commentary from Wyrd and some of the top content creators for Malifaux's upcoming 4th edition. I'm not going to tell you what has already been covered. Go to the 4th edition page in the links below if you want to see what has already been released. This video will go section by section through the new rulebook and highlight some of the differences between 3rd and 4th editions so you can apply those changes to your games going forward. I encourage you to download it and stay with me as I go through its contents. Keep in mind this is the April 16 version of the rulebook, so if you're watching this video later, there may have been updates to that document that deviate from this video. First and foremost, let me make clear that this is all still subject to change. If you're not familiar with beta testing, Wyrd encourages all players to play with the new rules, knowing that they're not quite finalized. With as complex as Malifaux is, you will surely come up with some scenarios and situations that completely break the rules as intended, even if they comply with the rules as written. Those will result in adjustments to the rules, so please jump in and get your hands dirty with the new rules as soon as your model's cards are released. With that said, I may also get a few details wrong since this is all so new, so please bear with me. Let's take a look at stat cards on page 4. They got a new look, but are still tarot-sized, so your current sleeves will still fit fine. You'll notice that movement is now called speed. It still works the same. You may worry about the lack of text on the front, but this is intentional. Some models in 3rd edition had as many as 6 abilities, which is a lot of information to keep track of through the whole game since abilities are always on. Most models won't have more than 3 abilities in 4th edition, so it should cut back on forgetting or overlooking your model's abilities. Master models have their title here. Each titled master brings a different totem for free now, and that totem is listed here. General upgrades are gone, so you don't have to worry about attaching those when you're hiring your crew. Some actions and abilities will still attach upgrades during the game, so they're definitely still part of the game. Each master comes with a crew card listed here that is like an upgrade for the entire crew. Each titled version of the master has a different card with different abilities and actions, in addition to a reference for the tokens most commonly used by that crew. Since they're all listed on the crew card, that means less hunting around in the rulebook or app. We'll talk more about tokens in a bit. Looking at fate cards on page 7, they're mostly unchanged. Maximum control hand size is now 7 cards, and you'll soon see why that is so cool. Positive and negative modifiers work the same, but in 4th edition, you are allowed to cheat fate if you have a negative modifier. Both jokers still work the same way. With Duels on page 10, one of the coolest 4th edition changes comes in Step A, Modify the Duel. Forget about using Soulstones. We'll address this later. Every model can now empower the duel by discarding a weak card. This does 2 things. It adds a positive modifier to your flip, and also adds the suit of the discarded card. It's like getting 2 Soulstone effects for the price of a weak card, and that's why the bigger control hand size is so cool. It's really useful to hold on to a few weak cards so you can empower duels when you need, and it's not just masters and henchmen that can do it. So back to Soulstones. You'll see this symbol next to some actions and triggers. That means the Soulstone is the cost of using that game effect. For instance, this Showstopper action that may or may not be on a model's card you might see next week has the Soulstone icon next to it. That means this model must drain a Soulstone as the cost of declaring this action. In the French drop, there are 3 possible triggers. The ram and mask can come from the card in the duel, but if this model drains a Soulstone, it can elect for the Baffled trigger, regardless of what suit was in the duel. The maximum Soulstone pool at the start of the game is only 5 Soulstones now instead of 10, but it's easier to gain them throughout the game. Most models have the Soulstone icon at the end of their health track. If that model is killed, you gain a Soulstone, which means you can keep using these awesome game effects throughout the whole game. Let's backtrack a little and talk about attack actions. There used to be melee, projectile, And the third type of unnamed action that was ranged but not a projectile, and I said they were kinda like spells. Well, now they really are. Attack actions are classified as melee, missile, and magic attacks. So other game effects may provide resistance to one type of attack, but not another, or may provide a bonus to one type or another. When you use a melee or missile attack, you can get a raise in the duel based on the difference in your duel totals. In 3rd edition, this difference might give you a positive or negative modifier to your damage flip, but now it's a raise. Every difference of 5 in your totals gives you 1 raise, so if you win a duel 10 to 20, that's 2 raises for you. Usually, that'll mean you increase the damage by 1 for each raise, but it might lead to other game effects based on what action or trigger you're using. The red joker still gives you a +1 bonus, so if that 10 to 20 duel were won with the red joker, that would be 3 raises you get. If your duel total is tied with your opponent, you do 1 less damage, even reducing to 0 if that's the way it works out. Moving on to page 12, the playing area is just called the table now, and it's still 3 feet by 3 feet. Measuring is mostly the same, but a little simpler when elevation is involved. Only the horizontal distance is measured now, so it doesn't matter if your target is on a height 4 building. If it's horizontally in the 6-inch range of your missile or magic attack, the target is in range. Line of sight may be an issue, but we'll get to that in a second. It's not mentioned in the new rulebook, but shockwaves and blast markers are gone now. They won't be used in 4th edition at all. Pulses are still a thing, they still require line of sight, and they still do not affect their sources. Movement is a little cooler in 4th edition, starting on page 14. You can now walk and even draw line of sight through friendly models, so that'll make it a little easier and quicker to move around, especially when you have weird terrain features in your deployment zone at the beginning of the game. Pushing is no longer a thing in 4th edition, but you'll see the word directly used, like on page 16 talking about toward and away. Directly is basically the new term for push, because the model that moves directly must go in a straight line and will stop if it hits impassable terrain or an enemy model. Placing is pretty much the same, and 4th edition makes it clear that placing a model or object does not require line of sight. On page 19 we get to elevation, and this is kind of a big deal in 4th edition. Wyrd recognizes that previous terrain rules were complicated and not fun, so pretty much every building was just impassable blocking terrain. They really want you to have more fun with terrain now and get on top of stuff. Some schemes will be scored only from elevated positions, so get ready for that. Remember we said that when a model is at a higher elevation, you still just measure the horizontal distance to it. This applies even to melee attacks, but the higher model cannot be higher than the size of the lower model. If it is, it's still out of range. If size 2 Summerteeth Jones is using a melee attack against Von Schill on this height 3 crate, Summer cannot hit him, since Von Schill's elevation of 3 is greater than Summer's size of 2. If the box were height 2, Summer could hit Von Schill with his melee attack, since Summer is also size 2. If the difference in the elevations is 2 inches or more, then the higher model gets cover, which means it reduces the damage by 1 if the attack is successful, regardless of the type of attack, melee, missile, or magic. In the situation with Summer and Von Schill would have cover and reduce the damage from Summer's melee attack by 1 because Von Schill's elevation is 2 and Summer's elevation is 0. Since we're talking about elevation, let's talk about moving up and down terrain. In 3rd edition, you could take back-to-back walk actions to get up climbable terrain. That's not a thing in 4th edition, but it doesn't need to be. If you end a walk action in base contact with a piece of terrain, you can just place your model on top of that terrain. This is called scaling. If there's another model or another piece of terrain like a crate or ice pillar marker on top of the terrain where your model should go, you can't scale it at that point. So just make sure you end your walk in contact with the terrain where you won't be blocked on top. You use the same scaling process to get down terrain by ending your walk at the edge and then moving over and down the side of the terrain until you're on the table or another piece of terrain that can support your model. Scaling does not count as falling. Falling happens when your model's base isn't at least 50% supported by terrain, just like in 3rd edition. If you fall 2 inches or more, you suffer 1 irreducible damage, but that's it. No more math. If you would fall on top of other models, you can choose to which side you would fall, to the left or right, as long as it's not the far side. If you fall far enough to suffer damage, that ends your movement. Since you're going to spend time on top of terrain, a cool new mechanic is jumping from terrain to terrain, seen on page 23. You can jump from terrain to another terrain within your speed range that is the same elevation or 1 inch lower, but no shorter than that. You also cannot jump to higher terrain. If there's a model in the gap between the 2 terrain pieces, you can jump over it as long as its size isn't greater than your model's elevation. This is really cool because you can genuinely leap from rooftop to rooftop without having to go back to the table, which puts this elevated terrain in everyone's reach and not just models with flight. Shadow of terrain is no longer a thing, and honestly, it was barely a thing in 3rd edition, it was so complicated. Simplified rules for blocking line of sight are on page 24 and make much more sense. Terrain and enemy models block line of sight only if it's the same size or height as both models involved. If the terrain or enemy model is the same size or height as only one of the models involved, it matters only when the shorter model is within 2 inches of that blocking model or terrain. There are many diagrams with different scenarios to help make it clear, but you know I'll make a video for this later on. Okay, on to gameplay on page 31. For starters, the game is only 4 turns long now, and you can score victory points on turn 1. Initiative no longer has a flip. In turn 1, the attacker goes first, and there is no option to make the defender go first. This cuts out the hemming and hawing over whether to keep initiative or give it away. In turns 2 through 4, whoever did not go last in the previous turn has initiative. In other words, if you activated the last model in the turn, your opponent will go first in the next turn. We haven't talked about hiring crews yet, but you'll see pretty quickly that one of the changes is that a master model must be the leader of your crew when they're hired. If your master is killed during the game and you have a henchman still alive, you can drain a soulstone to give that henchman a 3rd action until the end of the encounter. It doesn't make the henchman the leader of the crew per se, but helps ease the pain of losing that 3-action master model. You can do this only once in the game. During the activation phase, you'll discover that pass tokens are gone. You both need to keep track of how many models you have on the table during the game, but if you have the same number or fewer models that have not activated, you can pass your turn. Keep in mind you can't pass twice in a row, and this should help to speed up gameplay all around. We'll talk about scoring in the end phase later when we talk about strategies and schemes. Abilities on page 32 have incorporated a rule from 3rd edition auras. That rule is that a model cannot be affected by multiple abilities of the same name at the same time. They give a good example of that on the page, but it's just something to keep in mind as you play 4th edition. And just like there are 3 categories of attack actions, there are now 3 categories of defensive abilities. Physical defense has this icon. Magical defense has this icon, and unusual defense fits into this category. You'll see that some attacks or models ignore one type of defense but not another, so just look for those icons as you go. For actions, the word stat was changed to skill, but is still the number you add to the card you flip to determine success. Actions now have a damage stat to show how much damage, if any, the attack does, because now there are no damage flips. Page 34 reveals that models cannot make friendly attacks, meaning a friendly controlled model cannot attack a friendly model with an attack action. Since it won't be mentioned elsewhere in the book, friendly fire is no longer a thing either for ranged attacks. Bonus actions are now called signature actions and are cooler than before. Previously, your model could take 2 or 3 actions and a bonus action, but that bonus action could be used only once during that activation. Now your model can take 2 or 3 actions and a free signature action, and that signature action can be used as many times as you want. Looking at the Dreamer's card, he has the Prod Nightmare signature action. If he wanted to, he could do that action 2 or 3 times during his activation, and still do it once more for free beyond that. General actions have changed a bit, and Disengage, Focus, and Assist are all gone now. Interact has a 1-inch range now, so you can make or remove a single scheme marker anywhere within that range. Slam no longer affects impassable markers and simply removes one destructible terrain piece within an inch. The new general action is Prepare, and this gives the model an adaptable, focused, or shielded token. We'll talk about each of those in a minute. Taking actions, declaring triggers, and targeting restrictions are pretty much the same as in 3rd edition. We pretty much already covered dealing damage and how raises can affect that. There are some nuanced changes in 4th edition about who gets credit for killing a model with a token like burning, but they aren't major changes for the purposes of this video. What is significant is that pretty much every model now makes a remains marker within 1 inch when it is killed. No more corpse or scrap markers. Remains markers are destructible, so they can be removed with the slam action if you want to. Friendly and enemy on page 42 is essentially the same as in 3rd edition, with the addition of the term allied. A model is an ally if it is both in the same crew and shares a keyword. Some game effects will refer to allied models, so just watch for that. This will also affect hiring, which we'll get to in a minute. Wyrd recognized how crazy things can get when one model controls another, especially if the controlled action spawns other actions, so they made a detailed explanation of how this works on page 43. It doesn't change much from 3rd edition, but goes into more detail than the previous rulebook did. Also, take a look at pages 52 and 53 to see how elaborate this can be. Engagement is now always 1 inch, regardless of the range of your melee attacks or whether you have melee attacks at all. A model can even engage another model at higher elevation as long as the difference in elevation isn't greater than the size of the lower model, just like we explained earlier with Summerteeth Jones and Von Schill. Disengaging is not a thing any longer, and you can use the walk action to just leave a model's engagement, though your speed is cut in half, even if you're just moving around the model engaging you. Otherwise, the restrictions on engagement are pretty much the same as in 3rd edition. We've already covered using Soulstones, so on to station characteristics. No model is dual-factioned any longer, and that applies to masters as well. The first new rule about masters is that they must be in charge of the crew, so that eliminates dual master crews as well. Each master has 2 or more titled versions, and each one brings a different crew card and totem. You must bring the master's totem when you build your crew, whereas that was optional in 3rd edition. 4th edition right now doesn't list henchmen or enforcers as unique stations, but only minions and peons have numbers after their names, so if the model is unique, it's in that models previously referred to as henchmen and enforcers group. Some of these will have the henchman characteristic, which means that they might have a soulstone action and are eligible to assume leadership if the crew's master is killed. Peon is a model station that existed in 2nd edition, was removed in 3rd edition, and now is back. These are super minor models, like rats. They have an action limit of just 1, no engagement range, and don't even leave a remains marker when they're killed. There are a few other details on page 45, and you'll have to wait and see how these little guys factor into your gameplay. Markers are primarily the same as in 3rd edition, with the exception that you cannot have more than 5 friendly markers of a type on the table at one time. If you have 5 remains markers and another one of your models is killed, you have to remove one of the existing markers before making the new one. If you have 5 friendly scheme markers out and need to make another one, remove one of the existing markers and then make a new one. Tokens, starting on page 47, are a significant change from 3rd edition, since these eliminate conditions as they were known and expand the role of physical tokens. Poison and burning, for instance, are now represented by tokens, but tokens no longer stack. Either you have poison or you do not. There is no poison +2 or +10. If you already have a type of token and your opponent gives a new token of that type, the enemy token replaces your friendly token. While many models will give out new tokens unique to them or their crews, which is where the handy crew card comes into play, there are several basic tokens that every player should be familiar with. Adversary, distracted, fast, focused, injured, poison, shielded, slow, staggered, and stunned are all essentially the same as in 3rd edition. The new tokens include Adaptable, which you can get from the Prepare general action and lets you add the suit of your choice to a duel. Aura tokens, which create terrain around the model with it. Bolstered, which gives you +1 to your defense and willpower duels, but is cancelled by Injured. Burning now does just 1 damage in the end phase to the model with it, and to enemy models in base contact. Remember, that is enemy from the perspective of the token, not the model. Craven, which keeps a model from interacting and from counting for strategies and schemes. Entranced, which keeps you from cheating fate when you target an enemy model. Hastened, which gives you +2 to speed, keeps enemy models from moving you, and is cancelled by Staggered. Impact, which gives +1 damage to an attack. Insight, which lets you look at the top of your deck and discard it before a duel. And Summon tokens, which cannot be removed, prevent the model from taking the interact action, and means the crew does not infuse a Soulstone when the model is killed. Replacing is pretty much the same, but summoning has been streamlined. All summoned models automatically gain a summon and a slow token. When you wonder which models you might summon, look at their stat cards. If it has an STN, which is a summon target number, it is eligible to be summoned. In 4th edition, you don't have to pick a specific model unless that's required by the game effect you're using. You can perform your duel, see what number you get, and then see which models you can summon with that. Easier and cooler. Upgrades, timing, and terrain are all largely unchanged, so let's look at encounters on page 61. Until the Crew Builder app is redesigned for 4th edition, you'll be setting up your encounters the old school way, so pay attention to whose card counts for the deployment zone, the strategy, and whatnot, as detailed on these pages. When hiring your crew, you start with the Master and its Totem, which are both free. You can hire any models you want within your faction, with the regular out-of-keyword penalty if they don't share a keyword with your Master, unless they're versatile. All of this is like before. A new restriction is that you cannot hire more than 3 models that are not allied with your Master. Like I said before, allied means it's in the faction and shares a keyword, so this cuts back on the beef stew crews that some players enjoyed building. You'll also see some models with the loyal characteristic, which means they can be hired only into crews led by their named Master. Also remember that your maximum Soulstone pool is just 5 stones now. One of the coolest changes in 4th edition is with schemes and strategies. You can score victory points in turn 1, so no more wasting a turn screwing around in your deployment zone. You gotta get in there and get busy. The strategy is still shared between both players, and you can score 1 point in each of turns 1 through 3, and 2 points for the strategy in turn 4, for a total of 5 possible points for the strategy. Schemes are even cooler and lend to a more story-driven, choose-your-own-adventure style of gameplay. There are 3 schemes in the scheme pool at the start of the game, and each player picks one to secretly work on. Since you can score in turn 1, you might reveal and score that scheme right away. If you do, you then move on to a new scheme from the list of 3 schemes at the bottom of that card. When you score that one, you pick a new scheme from the list on that card, and so on. Schemes even have a bonus point you might possibly score, making it worth 2 victory points if you can manage it. The most victory points you can get from schemes is 5 points, just like the strategy, for a total of 10 potential victory points in a game. We've all probably had a game or two where it became impossible to score a scheme or two because a certain model was killed or the placement of markers and models was just too hard. No need to lose hope in 4th edition. At the end of each turn, you can reveal and abandon a scheme that isn't working for you. You don't get points for it, but you get to draw a new secret scheme to work on in the next turn. The last change here is that there are no core strategies and schemes. Gaining grounds will be the only strategies and schemes going forward, and they should be updated in September of each year. This is a quick overview of these changes, and it's been a great honor to be among those experienced and talented gamers playtesting and reviewing the rules. Change can be strange, but if you give it a chance, I'm confident you'll see that 4th edition Malifaux is engaging, fun, easier to play, and easier to bring new players into. It's not strange, it's weird. Future updates and videos about 4th edition will be Patreon exclusives for 2 weeks, so head over there and enroll if you want to get the latest info as it comes. And remember, play friendly games, keep it simple, and have fun.